This is not a revision vlog. Why isn't this a revision vlog? Because I was supposed to be working on prep for revising, and then I didn't do any of that. And then it was just a vlog of me talking about how I was gonna do that, and then I didn't do it. So this is not a revision vlog. Who is a writer. She has a book coming out in 2020, Ace of Spades. She brought together a bunch of different writers of color to create a mentorship called the Avengers of Color to have us writers mentor other writers of color and help them with their submission package for submitting to agents. So the deadline for that was July 10th, and that was the day when I was like, I can do a vlog about prepping for revision. And I didn't do anything because I was so like distracted going through my entries and like reading all of them, which was so fun to do, and like picking my mentees, which are picked, will be announced by the time this video comes out, but aren't announced currently. But anyway, I got very distracted by that. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna do a revision vlog. I'm gonna do a video about 5 things that I learned from mentoring that can help you in your writing journey. So this is essentially, I'm gonna talk about some of the things that I noticed when I was going through submissions, and hopefully talk about that and give some pointers that can hopefully help you for when you're submitting to agents, or if you're submitting to any other mentoring programs or contests, to kind of keep these things in mind. Some of them were just like things that I just noticed coming up over and over again, that I wouldn't have known to say, oh hey, this is something like people are regularly like doing really well or having issues with, and now I know, so now I can help other people in the future. And all the mentees are gonna get very specific feedback about their stuff, so this isn't like, let me pick on individual people and talk about stuff they did. It's really overarching general advice based on stuff I noticed. So let's get started. First thing I learned, or rather relearned going through the entries mentoring, is that beginnings are hard. Beginnings are really hard. And the hardest thing about beginnings is starting in the right place. And that was something I noticed, was that a lot of people weren't starting in the right place. So how do you know that? Something that I use is I measure based on the inciting incident. So the inciting incident is the big thing that happens that changes the character's trajectory for the entire book. So like in Twilight, this is when Edward like smacks the car to save Bella, and she's like, what the fuck? Where did he get that power? What's going on? That's an inciting incident. In the Hunger Games, the inciting incident is when Prue is chosen at the Reaping to be in the next Hunger Games, and then Katniss volunteers. Like, that's the incident that changes everything. It's usually like quite exciting, I think. And so that's a big part of beginnings. And to me, the 2 things that I think about when I write a beginning, because I've written and rewritten many beginnings many times, is this start of the story engaging enough to drive the reader to the inciting incident, like to have them read far enough to get there? And does the reader know the character enough by the time they get to the inciting incident that it matters? And that's something that I say because when you think about, using the same example of the Hunger Games, when you meet Katniss in the beginning, she like does all this stuff for her family. She goes out and hunts illegally when she shouldn't. She like goes and sells her stuff at this illegal black market. She wants to run away with Gale. She wants to run away with him. Lord knows why. She wants to. But she stays because she's like, I have to take care of my family. My family's so important. I can't leave my sister behind. My mom can't take care of her. I need to take care of my sister. Such that when you get to the inciting incident where her sister is chosen at the Reaping, you understand why she raises her hand and volunteers. And you care about her enough, and everything that's leading up to that has been engaging enough to keep you going to the inciting incident. What if the chapter started and it was just Katniss standing in the audience at the reaping, explain the reaping super quickly. She's like, this is my sister, whatever. Then her sister gets reaped, nominated from the Hunger Games to go be murdered. And Katniss raises her hand. She's like, I'll go be murdered instead. What? That would be so crazy. You would be like, what? You wouldn't. And then also, on top of being shocked that she did that, you'd be like, okay, well, I guess she'll go die. Like, would you care enough about her? And that's the thing about beginnings. That's the two things that I think about when I do beginnings, because it really helps me make sure that I'm starting in the right place, because you can start way too early. Like, you can start when Katniss is a little girl and has her first memory of the Hunger Games, and then people are getting bored by the time you get to the inciting incident, or you can start too fast, like that example I gave where you don't know enough about the character. And that's something to help with beginnings. The second thing was guidelines are important. Guidelines are important. That's something I learned. I already knew from querying, but really when I was going through entries, when the guidelines weren't followed, it really threw everything off and made things difficult. And because I'm in a mentorship position, like, I'll help people out. Like, I'll go that extra mile to help them out with things like we emailed people to be like, you forgot to attach this, or you forgot to do this, because we're providing a mentorship and we want to help people out because we want them to succeed. But in the real world, when you're sending a query to an agent, like, if you're not following guidelines, it's really like, it's such a fast way to get burned. Like, following the guidelines is a way to get your leg up on the query game really easily. Like, just do exactly what they say. If they say they want a 1-sentence pitch, give a 1-sentence pitch. If they say they don't want more than a chapter pasted in the query, or more than a chapter pasted in the email, don't paste more than a chapter. Just follow the instructions that they laid out. And not only does that help you, it also just makes you amicable to them. Number 3 is knowing you is important, even if you have no writing credentials. So something that was really great was we asked everyone for a bio, just like some information about themselves. And I didn't think this would be so important to me, but it was. But when people's bio, things that they had laid out in their bio that connected to the story, it was so helpful. Like, it was super helpful to realize, okay, this is how you as a writer connect to your story. And I had listened to a podcast, I can't remember which one it was now. I feel like it's the Manuscript Academy podcast, but I'm not 100% sure. But they had interviewed Eric Smith, who is a literary agent, and he had talked about how he liked when people at the bottom of their query had a bio that showed how they were connected to the story, because it helped him learn why that was the story they were writing, and that was important to him. And I found when I was going through entries, that was really nice for me as well, to see how people connected to the story. Even when I did my Black Witches book, when I was querying it, it is an own voices story, so there was a lot of me in it. But I talked about how I live in a house. I grew up in a house that had 8 people living in it, so that's why the family is so big. And I grew up with a mix of Trinidadian Canadian culture, and so that's why that's in the book. And there's something really valuable about seeing that personal connection, and it also, I think, in some ways can add a lot of authority to the story. You don't 100% need it. Like, not every story needs to like match your lived experience exactly, but I think it adds a certain weight knowing that that person has that certain expertise or experience in that area, and that it comes together in their writing. So that was really cool. So especially if you don't have writing bio credentials, I only had like one. When I queried, I had been in a short story anthology. I didn't have a lot of credentials, but it's something to add onto your bio that's interesting and relevant to the agent, even if it's not like a typical credential. So that's number 3. Number 4, I almost did 3. 4, standing out matters. It really, and by this I don't mean that you have the most upmarket, amazing pitch. You're like, this is I don't know, like Black Mermaids. Like, that is a pitch in itself that just makes people excited for good reason. And it's not like stand out in that you have to have those huge like upmarket really commercial hooks. It's just about pulling out what is unique about your story and showcasing it when you're sending out a submission. That was something I noticed as I was going through. I would be like, oh, that's kind of like a cool idea, but I've kind of heard it before and I don't know what's special about yours. And I think every entry that I thought that about, I'm sure that they have something unique and special about their story that they could bring out. It's just, it wasn't in the pitch, or it wasn't in the sample pages, so I didn't know. And that's kind of the same deal with an agent. Like, pick out what is unique about your story, what sets it apart, and present that to the world, because that's the special thing. And if you don't know what's special about your story, that's a whole problem in and of itself. But I'm sure you can find something, or maybe that's part of your revision. Maybe you need to add something that sets it apart, because the writing world is very saturated. There are lots of people writing stories. There are lots of people writing amazing stories. And especially from a marketing standpoint, knowing what makes yours stand out and unique can be so important in helping you. And that's definitely something you should think about and put forward when you're submitting to agents, so that they can see what's special about it too, so that they can see you stand out, so that they can pick you. So that's definitely something that came up that I think is really important. So the final thing that I noticed was you can do too much. What does this mean? This is really specific because I had gotten sci-fi and fantasy entries, all of them, because that's what I write, that's what I have expertise in. And the issue that I noticed was that so many people were getting bogged down in the world building that it was just like all world building, and I made it very hard to get into the character and get into the story. And I totally get this because I write sci-fi and fantasy, and world building is like when you introduce a new world to someone, you often have to explain a lot. It's not like a contemporary in which you can be like, they were in a bedroom. People know what a bedroom looks like. They can picture it in their head. You're going to add little details and that sort of thing, but you don't have to explain what the bed cover is and what this thing is. Versus in fantasy and sci-fi, depending on the setting you have, you may need to explain a lot of that stuff to build that picture. And since I've read Story Genius, which is like a fantastic novel, very life-changing for my writing, I really do believe that the character is first and everything else in the story should be falling around that character, and that you need to lead with them in order to engage people and have them connect to the story meaningfully. And when you get bogged down in world building details, spoke too fast. When you get bogged down in world building details, it's very hard for people to connect in that way. And then it makes it really difficult for people to get into your story. And that's what I mean by you can do too much. Something that I use myself when I'm writing sci-fi and fantasy to help me with beginnings and that sort of thing is that I'll ground it in something that people recognize. With one of my sci-fis is that she's in a field looking at a spaceship. And people don't know what the spaceship looks like yet, but they know what a field looks like, and they can start with a vague estimation of what a spaceship can look like, and then I can add all those little details. And that way you're not starting from ground zero where you're having to explain every single little thing that's going on. And sometimes you really can leave things out. Like if Bob looked at the goji plant and took a bite out of it, it was sweet. You don't have to be like, Bob looked at the goji plant, it's a special fruit that people eat for this reason, and then he took a bite out of it, it was sweet but a little bit chewy and juicy. You don't really have to get so into those details. Really lead with the character and explain if it's necessary for the character interacting in that way. And that's the great thing about having betas and CPs is you can start really lean in that way without explaining every little thing. And then if it comes up in their comments, they're like, what was this? I didn't know this really made it jarring in the story for me. That's when you can change and you can do those revisions. And that way you're kind of starting from a leaner point, and then you can build on as necessary. that was it for the 5 things I learned from mentoring that hopefully can help you in your writing journey, especially if you're querying or thinking about querying soon to agents, or if you're thinking about entering in other mentorship programs. That's something that you can kind of think about before you put your entry in, or to help revise and strengthen your entry for that. And I hope that was helpful to you. I'm gonna link below Farida, who created the Avengers of Color Mentorship. She's gonna do a blog where all of us mentors are gonna talk a bit about the aftermath of if you don't get into a mentorship program, and what you can do to move on, and some advice from all of us as a pitch wars rejection twice over, only cried the first time, can definitely help with that. And so I'm gonna link that below. You should definitely read that. It's gonna have some great advice, and Farida's awesome, and all the other mentors are awesome, so definitely read that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up so the algorithm can like me. And if you want to see more of these videos, please watch them and subscribe to my channel. I post every Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.